Hello and welcome back to A Perfect Night to Die with me, your host, Mark Aston. And on today's show we have a dear friend, the very, very talented artist and creative extraordinaire, Miss Bryony Shearmur. So, a bit of background to start off with. I was thinking about this and I think that we've known each other for over 20-something years.
I actually think I was thinking about this during meditation, and I know you're not supposed to really be thinking about much during meditation, but I was thinking about how long we have known each other and about how valuable that is, and about the hindsight that you get, and just what you think it's going to be, and then what it turns out to be, and how totally different those two things are just internally. And yeah, anyway, that's what I was contemplating during meditation this morning. It was nice.
We were living in Portobello, weren't we, in Notting Hill?
Right.
And we were both making music at the same time, and you were a singer. So we're born in the same, we're both Aquarians, we're born in the same year, we're born in the same month, we're both blonde, and we both fronted bands at the same time. So that's something.
That is something. That is definitely something. It's great, actually. I mean, how random and then also not random is that?
We went off and did our thing as Addict, and then quite soon after that you left for Los Angeles, which is where you are now.
Well, I mean, you were doing Addict. We were busy, we toured for a while. We did Scandinavia and Germany and all that, and we did all that touring. And then because we didn't have a therapist like Metallica, our band pretty soon fell apart.
Yeah, every band needs a therapist. I think I was the therapist.
Every band needs a therapist.
I was the cause of all the problems, then I had to solve all the problems.
Yes, and clearly that's the way we like it. And so anyway, I feel my image of that moment in my life is that I spent a lot of time in a van, which was great, and travelled a lot and threw things out of windows and had all the proper meltdowns that you're supposed to have when you're in a band, and dated the guitarist, and that was cool. And then suddenly everything just imploded and we couldn't make it. It was really like Humpty Dumpty. I couldn't make it all, I couldn't put it all back together again. And it just felt as if running away to Los Angeles was a good idea at the time. So I did. And yes, I've been here ever since.
Because I came out there with the band, our band split up, and I came to stay with you for a few months.
Yeah, and we went for a very long walk. I remember the very long walk, and I remember you telling me the key to everything was letting go.
Really?
Yeah, the key to everything was letting go. And I was like, yeah, but how'd you do that? And now I know, of course. But anyway, I remember you telling me that you were going to write a book, or you were writing a book, and there was a big outpouring of creativity, which was, brilliant. But yes, I've been here since 2001, and now I'm dying to come home again because I miss the weather and the people. And of course, America is particularly bonkers.
So we're recording this in November. The results haven't yet come in, I don't think, unless I've in the last few hours. So it's still
counting.
Biden narrowly ahead. Do we think he's going to make it?
Yeah, I think he'll make it, but what'll happen when he has made it, I don't know. In terms of Donald Trump is a particularly spiteful and vengeful person, so who knows what people have got in store. There are crowds gathering in Beverly Hills, pro-Trump rallies, and everything's boarded up, and they are expecting some trouble. Personally, it doesn't feel as if that's what's about to happen. The air feels quite calm, and it feels as if everyone's really just wanting to take a collective exhalation and to just begin putting things back together again. I think he'll win, but I mean, I don't know what difference it makes, really. People here are just this. It's a very odd place to live. Let me just put it like that.
Well, come home.
Oh, I'm dying to. I really miss the weather, which sounds so crazy, and I miss English people very, very much. So my plan is to buy a van, do a cross-country drive for a few months next year in the spring. I've got another show coming up in February, I think, and then and then skedaddle.
So this show, how would you describe it?
It's sort of multi-dimensional, which is a very odd and weird phrase to use, but it's called Cheap Sheets and Soiled Smalls. It is basically a series of long-form poems, essays, and letters that I wrote over a period of time that I have embroidered onto hospital blankets. And the reason I chose hospital blankets as my canvas is because I had been doing a lot of textiles. I've been doing a lot of work with words and writing, but I had been doing them on small panels, and I was in hospital having a procedure, and or actually I was having a blood transfusion is what I was having, which I highly recommend to anyone that can get one. And they gave me a hospital blanket, and it was just one of those, it was one of those moments when everything came together. It was definitely a perfect storm, and it was okay. I'm going to finally give myself the permission to say the things I want to say, to write the things I want to say, to actually do the things that I see in my mind's eye, and to
Let go.
yeah, to let go. Exactly, to let go, and that this will be my canvas. So I'd been journaling about what I was going through at the time, and I just started writing these passages and actually taking the time to put them together properly in some sort of form. And I did 9 of them, and I shall do probably another series of 9 more. But these were definitely the first things that I've done, and I've been creative my entire life, but these were the first things that I've done that I really recognized as being from a really inspired source. Like the feeling of inspiration was very, very, it was very clean. It was very clear. It was very, I don't know if there's a word for it. I wish there was a word for it, but you know the feeling.
I know the feeling. And strangely, it's the same feeling that I have doing this, talking to people about on this podcast about these things.
Right.
It
right.
it kind of feels to me like
see that.
It feels like coming home a little bit.
Right. Feels like the culmination of everything. It's the thing, isn't it?
When I saw this art, for all the years that I've known you, you've been taking photographs and making music. But this, for me, was the first thing that it just kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, wow, this is so powerful.
And for me, that was it's the same. Like it's very real. It's very, very, very real. And I think that you, as an Aquarian, me certainly, I think that's what we're always wanting to get to, like that point where you think this is about as real as it can get.
Absolutely, totally agree. I've got your book of all the pieces of the collections that, no matter how you describe them, it's very difficult to do them justice. I assume these are full-size sheets that they're written or embroidered on as well.
Yeah, they're about 7 feet by 5.5 feet. And, there are lots of people who have seen the pictures of them who then came to the show. And you have a completely different experience because you're interacting with something that has collected energy over time. When I was making them, I would deliberately, they were one of the things I also happened to me while I was in that period of my life, was I stopped driving. So I was using public transport, which in Los Angeles is something of a challenge, but actually worked out well for me. And I would take these things on the bus with me, and I would sit and I would sew, and I would be working on them all the time. And people would be attracted to and intrigued by them, and very often would want to start a conversation. So I felt as if they pulled in a lot of energy, not just mine, but from the city and wherever I happened to be. And if I was going to see friends, I would sit and I would sew, and it was a really, really nice thing to do. It was a really nice process. So when you see them in the flesh, they do actually have a lot of energy in them. And I also have recorded them, so you can scan a QR code when you go and see them, and then you can stand and you can have it read back to you by me. So it's a fully immersive experience, and people cried, which was
The best thing that could possibly happen.
I mean, people really had an experience. And the thing also I found was that a lot of people who read the book and they read the words and they say, "Oh my God, you're so brave," and these are so revealing and personal. But first of all, I felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt as if not doing it would have been far more risky for me personally, because then you're just suppressing something that's supposed to be coming out. And when people see them, read them, hear them, invariably the response is, "I know exactly what that feels like. I've had that experience. That's my story. I can relate to that." So it was definitely a means of uh, communication and connection and just sharing.
Well, this is from Catharsis 1, which is one of my favourite pieces of yours. And I'm going to read this out here. "What if I'm wrong, and my judgment was fear, and my fear was ignorance, and my ignorance was anger, and my anger was self-pity, and my self-pity was a story? And what if the story was a tall tale passed down from God knows where? And what if the story could be rewritten as an epic tale of love and light, of romance and redemption, of living out loud and not hiding? This is the moment of truth."
Woohoo! It gave me goosebumps.
How about that?
Yeah.
So some context for this work, for where this inspiration came from. You were really poorly, weren't you?
I was very poorly. I had what turned out to be a benign tumor, which was fantastic. And actually, it was a very common kind of tumor. I had a fibroid, but it was really messing with my body. And
when did you find out it was benign?
Basically, what happened was, and I suppose I can, I mean, let's just tell it all. I am 50 years old. This all started when I was about 48, 47, what have you. But I was bleeding very, 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 very heavily all the time. And my girlfriends were saying, "This is normal, you're perimenopausal, this is what you should be going through." And I thought, okay, fair enough, I'll go with that. And, I like to think that I can power through most physical ailments. It's basically what I've been, how I've always been, just, let's just power through. And I'm particular, I'm a healthy and fit person. Anyway, so I was going through this thing. I was also kind of fascinated by it. I thought it was, I was having my own little experiment. And anyway, so I was going through that. And as a result, I became very, very anemic. And it was a very odd sensation. I walk or I hike or I run every day. And suddenly I couldn't do that. And I literally couldn't do more than sort of 15 or 20 steps, and without my body just wanting to completely collapse. And I just thought, okay, well, this is it. This is what it's like when you get old. This is what happens. And I was busy just getting into that groove of, okay, I'm old now and I can't do the things that I used to do. Anyway, ultimately, I took myself to the doctors, who said, this is possibly not quite normal. So I had various, I had the ultrasounds and the x-rays, and they discovered that I had this thing. And then I had to go and have a couple of blood transfusions, which were lovely. They are the most, for me at any rate, I remember them as being incredibly peaceful. I was in this really nice hospital room and it was quite dark, and I just sat there and sort of had my blood replaced and replenished. And while I had been going through all of this, before I knew what was happening and after, I had intuitively felt as if sewing and that kind of meditative, repetitive, creative action was what I needed to heal. And I also had read, there's a medical medium called Anton Williams who, in the back of his book, he talks about how sewing and those sorts of
mindless almost.
Oh yeah, they take you into another realm. They are very healing ways of spending time, which should come as no surprise when you look back through history and you think that women who sit in sewing circles, women who go and they sit by the bed of someone who's sick, and they'll sit and they'll knit, or it's that kind of energy. And I intuitively felt as if that was what I should be doing. So I had started these pieces when I then went into hospital, and so I started doing them then, and they were an absolutely integral part of my healing process. And when there are some people that seem to say, God, did you do that by hand? And how did you have the time? But I honestly feel as if that time is the most valuable time spent. It's so delicious. It just felt so good to be making them and doing them, and also really diving deep into me, my life, my psyche, and having those sorts of catharsis where you are also ridding the body and the mind of whatever it is that's making you sick in the first place.
And so you taken into hospital because you were bleeding so much, or because you had to have this benign tumour removed?
That I had to have a surgery and they had to have it taken out. That is the first one. Cheap Sheets and Soiled Smalls is really all about that process, and about my surgery, and about everything that came up when, in terms of, okay, if I am now menopausal and sort of the opportunity to have children, and did I really want that, or just about the choices that we make as humans, and the choices that I made or didn't make, and whether those things are deliberate or whether I have just sort of drifted through. And it was really about getting very close up and taking a deep look into me, and like everybody does, one's life. And suddenly you're not 18, and sometimes that's great, and other times that's doesn't feel so great.
Did you find some peace in all of this? Because presumably there was a point where you didn't know that was benign. You didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little scary. I definitely contemplated my physicality in its most real way, and how precious that is. And yeah, I mean, you start to contemplate mortality and immortality and all of those things. I also had chosen not to explore. My own fear basically meant that, initially I just decided to ignore it, and I thought, this will just clear up and go away, and knock on wood and fingers crossed and all the things. And then it didn't. And so I did go to a doctor, and you sort of go in and you think, I'm going to get some really terrible news. And the fear of that was what had prevented me from going to see someone in the first place.
And do you think that through this catharsis and this experience, do you think that you've dealt with that fear, or do you think that you've become less afraid as a consequence?
Well, I think that dealing with fear is a constant for anybody if you really, really look at it. I mean, even though I do things that look as if I'm quite fearless, even though I still think there are elements. I mean, when I'm walking down the street sometimes and I'll do something, and I can't give you an example right now because I can't think, but a small thing, but you'll do something and you think, oh, yeah, that's some old programming, that's some fear. I think that as human beings, we live with a certain amount of fear most days, but it's how you decide to deal with that.
Sure, but this is the ultimate fear, isn't it? What this kind of podcast is all about. How we choose to completely ignore it, which I think most people do, deny it, or until we're forced to face it.
Until you have to, right? And I have to say that at the moment it seems to be one of those. I think whether I'm conscious of it or not, I think I ask myself every single day whether I'm afraid of death. How do I feel about death? Like, I think that's a question that I ask myself every single day. And I think we all do, because yes, I think that's what's at the back of our minds all the time. And certainly in terms of my meditation practice, dealing or not dealing with, because you can't deal with it. You can only come to terms with it. You can only decide to start looking at it in a different way, to embrace it, to accept it, to have it inform the choices that you make during the day and how you're going to then live your life or spend your time. But yeah, it's definitely something that's front and center for me most days. I don't think about it all the time, but I know that it's there. And a lot of the information that I seems to be coming at me from various channels, be that people or television or books or whatever, is about that. It's about having, death right in front of you all the time, right there in front of your nose, and letting it be something that inspires instead of something that makes you afraid.
If I had a fanfare to play, I would play it at that point. So another one of your very beautiful creations is called "You Changed Everything," and it's just love, 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 embroidered over and over and over again on this huge sheet until the very end. And then the you sign off. You changed everything. So
yeah,
I was curious. Is that self-love? Is that love as a thing, as an entity, as a state of being?
I think it's those things. It's love as a state of being, and that one is actually part of a triptych that's included in this series. And while I was going through this, and I was kind of in like this self-imposed lockdown because I really couldn't leave the house, I was Airbnb-ing my guest bedroom, and I had a guest come and stay who actually was someone who lives in Los Angeles but needed a room for whatever reason. And he came and he stayed, and we became friends, and we would sit and we would talk about subjects like this for hours and hours, and it was really nice. And then I ran into him again some months later walking down the street. Anyway, long story short, we became friends and then we became lovers. And it was just, yes, that one is about that state of mind of being where you are so connected to a quantum field and to just that feeling of invincibility and just that state of love, which is so hard to put into words, but which feels so fantastic and feels very much like our natural state. And it changes everything. So he was the catalyst for me sort of, getting there. But yeah, I was definitely in love at that moment.
Wonderful.
And I think that when that happens, I do always try and a bit like a method actor. I'm like, okay, remember this feeling, and don't let it be inspired by an external force or anything that can then be removed. Just integrate this into yourself and remember this and turn it into, or let it be, self-love. And it's not always easy to get there, but I mean, it does change everything. It is a powerful force for sure.
I think it's the force. It's the place that underpins everything.
Completely. Yeah. And certainly that's what and as you say, everything that's on top of that is just something that has been told to us, programmed into us. Like it's a piece of information that came from the outside that you have then internalized. I mean, I've been reading a lot of books about the quantum field and neuroscience in that respect, and I do.
The quantum field being energy that exists constantly,
and that we as humans can tap into at any point. But I really wish, and my hope for generations that come, is that this particular aspect of our operating system, the fact that you can tap into this, that there is a collective, that the underpinning, as you so beautifully put it, is this indescribable sensation of love and compassion and calm. It's really the eye of the storm. that is something that will be part of any sort of educational curriculum, because I think that is how we are designed to operate, and we have somehow managed to create this social construct which goes against that, which actually is very unnatural, which is why there's always so much tension and friction, because if we were left to our natural state, we would all be dancing and
blissful. Kind of like the opposite of TikTok.
And I just watched that Panorama documentary. My mum told me to watch it. But here's the thing: is that if all that information is out there, when you watch documentaries like that, and you see things like that, and there are lots and lots of them, and you just think, well, if we know this, like if that information is there and it's freely available, why are we still going around in this particular cycle? Right? Why do we do that?
We're in just such a interesting place right now with everything that's going on in the world, and it's very difficult to make it sit, seeing the world reflecting something completely different back.
I know.
And it seems completely, it feels so incongruous to what I understand it means to be human, which is to have compassion, and for our true state to be loving and benevolent and kind and generous, and then to see all of these things in the world reflected back to you that really aren't those things.
Well, no, they are all based in fear. The other things are all based in fear, and it's amazing to me how many people operate like that. But all of this information, the fact that that science and neuroscience are now all adopting these, what up until now have specifically been in the arena of the spiritual, or the hippies, or the this or the that, or however people choose to see it or call it. But all of this information is now becoming more commonplace, and that people who in the past would never have adopted or choose to elected to give any credence to meditation or yoga or any of this, and now thinking, oh, there's something to this. Like, actually, the Egyptians had all this dialed in, and that all these races who have gone before us, some of who knew all this stuff and actually chose to live like this as a collective, that I think it's becoming more commonplace. And I think that at some point soon, I really hope, this will become the way of human life, if we don't actually screw up the planet and just become extinct beforehand.
Yeah. It seems like quite a way to go. We have a little way to go before we get there.
We do, but everything seems to be happening at a very accelerated rate.
I was thinking today, before I called you up, that 20 years ago, how amazing it is still that it's nighttime here, and it's the morning there, and you're the other side of the world, and we have this technology that connects us and enables us to do things like this, where 20 years ago we didn't. I think we had mobile phones, maybe.
No.
You could send a text.
I know.
I remember this. There was a friend of mine that was living with me at the time, and she came in, and she was Australian, and she said to me, "You're never going to believe this. I can send a message, a text to the other side of the world. So I can send a message home, and someone's going to get." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
it's crazy. She says, "No, look, watch." She sent this text, and it was just like the most amazing thing.
I remember the first time someone came around with an iPod, and they had a playlist, and they just put this thing on and plugged it into a speaker, and I can remember sitting there thinking, wow, this is really amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, this is so cool. And now iPods, you look at an iPod now and you just think, that's it's old fashioned. Yeah, it's an antique. Yeah, I've still got my iPod. I love it. It's the only thing that actually has that has Nancy Freeze things on it. I don't know how else to, and I can't get them off there because, of course, now
Nancy Freeze, for the listeners, is your band.
Yeah, but yeah, and obviously the software now is obsolete, so they are stuck on my iPod forever and ever.
Well, I've got a cassette tape. I had to go and find a cassette player with a song that I wrote for my for my dad when he was having a breakdown.
Wow.
Which is still a great song, but I couldn't play it. I've had this cassette, and I was like, I'm gonna do with this, and I want to record it. And I spoke to James Denham, our old bass player. Do you remember James?
Yeah, of course.
And he said, yeah, that song. He said, do you remember that song called Hood? And I was like, yeah, it's wicked, but I've only got it on a cassette player. He's like, yeah, you've got to get this. So I hunted down like a 20-year-old cassette player, and it worked, and it played, but it's bizarre.
Oh, isn't that great though?
So, once again, your exhibition is called Cheap Sheets and Soiled Smalls, and it's on a Women Matter exhibition at Matter Studio Gallery in LA.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It's on until the 29th of November, so if you're in town and you can make it, get yourself down to that, because it's amazing. And thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh my God, it's been so much fun. I wish your podcast went on for 6 hours.
Well, next time it can. Lots of love to you.
And to you.
Thank you again, and we'll speak again soon.